Assalamu alaikum. This is Naaila, and I am joining you live from Atlanta, Georgia. We had some connection issues, but we're going to jump right back in and get started. Now, and just that I was discussing an issue in regard to someone feeling sadness during the month of Ramadan. And as I was saying, I want you to think about whether or not the isolation that one can experience during Ramadan, if that's something that is a trigger for you. I always say that there are three emotions that cause people to go to some of the deepest places. That's love, fear, and loneliness. When you have one of those emotions, sometimes people don't always make good decisions, or it really does take us to a low point. Those are very, very strong emotions. So I want you to keep that in mind. All right, number 3. As a Muslim woman, the thought of Ramadan fills me with dread because I just have so much to do. Can you give us, sisters, tips on how we can cope with this overwhelming feeling so we can benefit from the month? When you say that there is so much to do, I'm going to make the assumption that you mean in regard to acts of worship, because there are a couple to do. So the first thing that I'm going to say to you, and this is kind of like related to the first one, the first question that we had before we have the technical difficulties, and that is break it down into steps. And I would also remember, there are things that are fard. There are things that are obligatory. And then there are things that are really just for your benefit. Allah gives you some hookups during the month of Ramadan that really are just added blessings. They're not things that you have to do, that are mandatory. So I want you to focus in on the things that are must-dos. The things that we still need to do is our prayer. And we still need to get up for suhoor. And I know for some people that's a hardship. But even if you do nothing but drink a glass of water, because that is something that you should do, is to have your suhoor, make your intention for fasting, and to do your fasting and to break your fast. Yes, even breaking your fast, that is something that you need to do. There are people who believe that, I'm just going to keep on going and it's just going to make me better. No, we follow the instructions. Break it down into small steps. And if it feels and seems like it's so overwhelming for you, and I totally get it, then what I advise you to do is to focus on the things that are obligatory. And then maybe once a week, say, okay, I'm going to add something extra. But focus on because especially if you're new, it can seem it is too much. Let me go back. Okay, you didn't say whether or not you were a new Muslim. You just said as a Muslim woman. But either way, it can feel like it is a lot. So what you can do is just break it down. Even little baby steps will move you forward. All right, number 4, I smoke, and thus Ramadan is a difficult time as I cannot smoke during the daytime. Do you have any tips to help quit smoking or other addictions? The first thing that I would tell you is that Ramadan is not yet here, and smoking cessation is something that you can engage in at any time during the year. So I don't know what method would work best for you. There are people who use a medical method. There are people who use things like acupuncture. There are people who use all kinds of things to help them with smoking, with smoking cessation, which is actually just stop smoking. The best thing for you to do is to go ahead and start implementing that now, not waiting until Ramadan begins to say, I gotta stop smoking. You're really just adding on a lot of stress to yourself. That's totally unnecessary. Ramadan is not meant to make you a superhero. And I'm not speaking in regard just to this person with the smoking issue, and that goes for all of us. It is not meant to put us into this mode of being this heroic and superhero year-old Muslim for 28 to 30 days. It is about helping us to build some stamina. It is about helping us to be closer to Allah. It is about helping us to control our desires, and so that we can control our nafs and be better people and not be impulsive, and to not give into things such as addictions like smoking. And so this is one of the things that it helps. However, we literally wake up and Ramadan is in. I mean, this is just not realistic in regard to human behavior. One day I'm a smoker and the next day I wake up and I can't get a cigarette. Physically, you are not going to feel well. Now add fasting to it. And I'm going to say again, physically, you are not going to feel well. You are giving yourself an additional burden. Go ahead and begin the process of not smoking when Ramadan is not in. I want us to be mindful, and this is not about having any judgment on anyone, that in the other months of the year, we're not supposed to be smoking. Okay, number 5. I would like to have sex with my wife during Ramadan, but she says she has neither the energy nor the motivation for it. She wants us to not have sex the entire month. It just seems impossible to me. Do you have any advice? I tell you, a lot of men will have that same problem, brother. Do I have any advice for you? And what I would say is that let us be mindful that marriage is about giving each other their mutual rights. And while one of you may not be in the mood or be physically interested in doing something for another person. For example, a wife, she may say, I've worked all day and I don't feel like cooking, but she may go and prepare a small meal for her husband because he too has worked all day and he's hungry. My point is that we do things in consideration of the other person in a relationship, because that's why we're in the relationship, to relate to the other person and to give the other person their rights. And in a marriage, the other person actually does have the right to sex and intimacy. So I would ask your wife to just reconsider and to be mindful that sex itself is an act of worship. And while there are many benefits of worship during the month of Ramadan, that act, the act of intimacy with her husband, she can also get benefit from that too. Secondly, to consider you. And this has nothing to do with you being a man, but I do know there are a lot of men who would have the same comment that you do. But for her to also consider that may be a hardship for you. And is that fair to you? It's not, because she wouldn't want you to put a hardship upon her. We have to be mutually, give mutual consideration to the other person. And likewise, I would ask you to be considerate of her. Ramadan, it is physically tiring. It is a purification, but it is physically tiring. Okay, so those are my questions for today. I'm going to go to my Great About Islam team and make sure that I didn't miss anything, miss any questions from anyone that came in. And I appreciate all of you for joining in today. If you have any other questions or comments, please go ahead and put them in. I always come back and I try to find out what they are so I can do what I can to follow up with you. I appreciate you all. I'm so glad that you were here. Tell your friends, and I will be back in 2 weeks, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.